I'm Donghyun Ahn, and I'm currently working Max Planck Institute for Security and Privacy as a postdoc. And now I'm mainly involved in the project to estimate the socioeconomic indicator of certain region with satellite imagery by adapting the machine learning techniques. For example, we estimate population, regional GDP, or labor force by analyzing satellite imagery in the target region. So today, I would like to introduce my research, human-machine collaborate approach measures economic development using satellite imagery, and how the model applied in the real-world problem. So before we move on, I will briefly share the previous study I made and the motivation of this work. And ever since I got interested in evaluating economic developments with demographics, I found that there is a challenge to collect the statistics in sustainable way for the underdeveloped countries. For a kind of extreme example, the latest population data of North Korea is one that recorded in 2008, and that is very outdated. So therefore, I try to approximate the economic development by using the external data source that doesn't rely on some kind of survey from the specific organization. And satellite imagery was an excellent example of those kind of alternative external data. So I developed my model step by step, and here are two highlighted results. Starting from the left, the image demonstrates the level of the development within the 0 to 1 scale across the South Korea. And it is hard to say South Korea is a developing country, but we first test on such place because we require to test on the required ground truth data to evaluate our model's prediction accuracy across the multiple indicators. So after that, we found our model's estimation fits to the ground truth. And then we scale the economic developments on Asian developing countries with tested model. So one significant advantage of such data, satellite imagery data, is global accessibility, allowing for the data collection from any location of the Earth. And this accessibility facilitates comprehensive monitoring and analysis of various phenomena, starting from urban developments to environment changes, even without visiting the exact place. So moreover, the data quality remains consistent across all locations, which standards attributes such as RGB, red, green, blue channels, ensuring the uniformity and reliability in analysis and also for the interpretation across the different regions. And starting from very first stage, we need to verify such research question. Can deep learning capture the human activity from the satellite imagery? And to answer this question, it is necessary to verify whether the machine learning can actually capture the visual features, so especially the human activities apparent in the satellite images. So what would be the logical way to classify or discriminate the economic status of satellite imagery? In the context of deep learning, this issue can be resolved if the satellite image embedding results from the neural network are available to be distributed according to their own appearance. So, for example, if the embedding results for the urban and rural-like images are distributed in really different space, we can assume that the neural network have an ability to classify the images based on their appearance. And moreover, we have a chance to fit these embedding statistics to estimate economic indicators over the captured regions. And here is the example results we tested on South Korea, where the 4 images came from suburban regions, contained both the residential area and a farming area. And if I convey each image to embedding space suggested by the deep learning, you can notice that as much as residential area contained in the image its embedding located very far from the rural embedding spaces. And from this pilot study, I recognized that applying deep learning on satellite imagery can work as a key to detect economic activity in the captured area. So then me and my team proposed a method called LEAD, which is abbreviation of the representation extraction over arbitrary districts. And we made a model to extract fixed size representation from all satellite imagery in arbitrary size area without any sampling. So fixed size means here that the size of representation vector don't change regardless of the number of the satellite imagery. Now, moreover, we introduced additional techniques to reduce dimension and produce the lightweight representations. For example, we provide 1,000 labeled satellite imagery with 3 classes: urban, rural, or you can just call mixed area, and animated area to pre-train the neural network. Combined with this fine-tuned neural network, we first summarized the images in 512 dimensional vector, and then compress it to k dimensions through the PCA, and conduct the final representation consists of statistics for each of k dimension. So there are 3 statistics: rho, mu, sigma, and one meta information n that states the number of the satellite imagery in the given region. This fixed length representation enables the regressor to fit for arbitrary sized area and prevents overfitting even with the small labeled dataset. So we evaluate our model's performance with ground truth population density, and 5 baselines are compared with our model. And we tried directly using the 9-light intensity for prediction, or training autoencoder to extract information from satellite imagery instead of using our pre-trained encoder. And a model without using the proxy dataset or model utilizing 9-light intensity for the proxy are also implemented. And lastly, we considered the Facebook research prediction results in the online as a state of art in those days are compared for the performance check. And as a result, our model performs all the baselines and verifies our model's properties. And this figure shows the embedding result from our trained encoder, and each dot represents one satellite image, and we visualize embeddings from the urban and rural labeled images. So according to the figure, our encoder well separates the urban and rural in the embedding space. And we observe that images along these 2 arrows show the trend for de-urbanization and urbanization, respectively. So that was the first method we used for the developed countries, which have tons of ground truth data. But on the other hand, there remains 2 limitations to utilize the previous model in practice. First, existing classification of regression models cannot be applied to regions without the ground truth data. And actually, this is very crucial issue because this happens where these techniques are most needed, especially in the developing countries. And next, even if we want to make a label by ourselves for training, this needs a high annotation cost for achieving the whole annotations for our training model. So here is the alternative version for targeting developing countries, including human machine collaboration. And let me introduce the details. So the computing machine first contributes to gather and cluster the satellite imagery in certain number of clusters. This hires the unsupervised method. And in the North Korea case, this was 22. And this is the hyperparameter depends on the total number of dimensions of the images. And then most importantly, human contributes to make the lightweight version of annotation across the clusters, which gives information about the relative developments between the clusters. And here is a real example about how we made the estimate scores over North Korea, and which is one of the most closed country in the world. We hired 10 experts to generate the simple annotation for the clusters, consists of North Korea defectors, economists, and geoinformation system researchers. This annotation is called partial order graph, or in short, POG, which labels the order between the clusters. And the point here is that we utilized all the POGs collected by all the annotators as a form of the ensemble POG, which is an aggregated version of the annotations. So for better understand the ensemble of the POG, this was an example of actual annotation we collected from our annotators. So basically, for each cluster, we pick a handful of representative images, and then ask annotators to say which clusters looks like it's doing better economically based on those pictures. In our North Korea study, we had 10 clusters, 22 clusters got everyone's labels, and then combined into one ensemble POG to act as our go-to reference. And looking ahead to when you have way more than just 10 annotators, we made the process only keep the rankings that lots of people agree on. And if you run the crowdsourced survey, something like Mechanical Turk, you will definitely run into some weird or off-the-wall responses. So what we do here is recording every annotator's link for each partial order graph they made, check check the overall spread, and if one person's link is way far out of the overall rank distribution, we basically give it almost zero weight when we merged everything. So that way, the final ensemble version of the partial graph really reflects what the majority thinks. So we hire the ensemble POG with maintaining with the high agreements of the whole annotators. And as a result, here's the result we got from the new scoring model, works on the North Korea within both grid and district level. We can observe that the most crowded place is Pyongyang, the capital city of North Korea, as expected, and the mean of the aggregated score are represented in the right image. So because there are not much available geolocated data in North Korea, we first compared the results to 99 imagery for the evaluation. And this would be the results tested over 4 indicators that aggregate within the district level. And we take an average score for each district to report our estimation. Since our score has 0 to 1 scale, we take log for both x-axis. So the x-axis would be log of our average measurement, and y-axis would be log of each ground truth indicator. We can find the great correlation between the model score and most of the testing indicator. Most of the testing in ground truth indicator, and we just where the but there is one exception on the number of the company. It looks slightly worse than others in view of the districts here. And I don't know why we have shortage here, but in the view of the grid level score, if we zoom in the results on the SEPO country and compare it with 9-ray imagery in North Korea, we can consistently identify small patches that indicate high level of the human activity. However, in the 9-light imagery, they have limitation in terms of light intensity, which restricts the ability to gauge the extent of developments in surrounding areas. So our model actually explains developments a lot better than just relying on the 9-light images. And for the further discussion, I would like to share one of the most interesting examples we found during our study. We run our model on economic development zone, which are the areas that selected for conducting special development mission in North Korea, along with two different timelines, which are 2016 and 2019. If you see the upper half of our model reporting a huge difference between two timelines for the tourism area, Wonsan Karma, while such no big difference are spotted in the industry area, which is V1 here. And looking through the news article those days, we find that the article about the tourist zone, Wonsan Karma tourist zone, confirming that the North Korean leader Kim Jong-un visits this place, this area more than 20 times more over 3 years, which somewhat supports our finding because we can guess that there would be much more pressure to development on this area. And we also apply our model on 5 low developed countries, Nepal, Myanmar, Cambodia, Bangladesh, and Laos. And for those countries, we can obtain a ground truth indicator on employment, establishment, and population at least 3 or more countries. And as illustrated in the figure, our human machine collaborate algorithm shows our performing prediction results in most of the cases compared to all the other baselines. And here are some takeaways. And satellite imagery offers a top-down view on the economic development across regions, and the supervised approach delivers excellent results to predicting the economic indicators of data-rich countries. And even in case of the lack of the ground truth, we can also adapt the human-machine collaborative approach to get the score, which they named the size score here. So this can be applied to the data-scarce countries, such as North Korea, to get the estimate of grid level and also the district level to measure the socio-economic development in the developing country regions, underdeveloped regions. So basically, that's pretty much I have, and maybe I can just pass the screen to the Jeasurk.
Yeah, so hello, I'm Jeasurk, working with Donghyun at MPI-SP. I would like to introduce another wonderful project at our institute, which is using computer vision techniques to detect and monitor slums, informal settlements in the world, like you can see in the photo. So before the short introduction of my journey as a slum researcher, I have a background of social science, not computer science, but specifically I did my PhD in geography from Singapore. And I did my PhD project living in actual slum communities of the world, interviewing slum people, and it is more closer to qualitative method. But during my PhD, I coincidentally met Donghyun and other computer scientists and found that there could be very wonderful potential collaboration possible between my work as a geography and computer vision techniques. So I joined the MPI as a postdoc now, and I don't visit actual slums now, but sitting down at my office, but virtually visiting slums in the world from the sky. So I would like to introduce my exciting result from such wonderful collaboration. So urban poverty is of course a huge problem of human society. In 2020, more than 1.1 billion people living in slums or slum-like conditions. And for the next 30 years, there will be more than 3 billion people living in such settlements. And there is no doubt that escalating slum population is a significant urban challenges. So this is why the United Nations has designated slum population ratio as one of the primary indicators for Sustainable Development Goals, SDG. But what do we know about slums? The problem is that we don't know about slums because there are not so many statistics and data on slums. The most well-known data on slums is the UN Habitat's slum estimate at national scale. So it indicates a steady decline in slums across all continents since 2000. However, many empirical slum researchers who work in the field raised the question against UN Habitat estimates. I also agree with this as well because I have seen so many slums expanding so fast, especially after COVID-19. They suggest that UN Habitat might underestimate the slum challenges now. Also, this estimate from UN Habitat is national level, so does not tell about the regional distribution of slums at local or city level. So this is why we can focus on computer vision techniques on satellite imagery. Because of the low cost and consistency and regular availability of satellite images, we can monitor slums at national and city and even local level. However, a cross-country and multi-temporal slum detection model has not been developed yet because slums look so differently by countries and continents. It is very hard to monitor and all kinds of slums in the world with one universal model. So that is why we launched the SEGSLUM project, meaning the segmentation of slums that aim to develop methods for detecting slums in diverse geographies. Yeah, we need to talk about definition of slums. The word slum itself has a negative connotation, but the slum is an official term used by international organizations like United Nations, and there are 5 specific definitions of slums given by UN Habitat. Here we focus on the first definition, which is a durable housing. Slums are constructed with non-permanent building structures and materials. Like you can see at the photo, slums are built with metal, mud, paperboard, and other informal materials. These materials are easily identified with satellite images from the sky, so we can develop a model to detect such buildings. This field, slum detection using satellite imagery has quite a long history, over 25 years. Many approaches have been introduced, including visual interpretation, meaning human expert manually annotate the boundary of slums with satellite imagery, looking at the images and just drawing. But the most recent one is machine learning based classification. Not surprisingly, it has the highest performance. And when it comes to the types of satellite images, most studies use the low or medium resolution satellite imagery, more than 10-meter resolution per pixel, because of its high availability. But more recent works use very high resolution, VHR, below 2-meter per pixel resolution. So it is very meaningful to use machine learning approaches on VHR because as the slum buildings are very compact and small, as you can see with photos, resolution below 1 meter is recommended. But at the same time, VHR contains so much information and noises, so this field rarely used this data set yet. I want to talk about a little bit more details about this field. There are 4 challenges that hinder the universal slum detection model. The first is the lack of high-quality slum ground truth data. Imagine if you collect slum data, you need to bring GPS machine and need to visit all slums in cities, which will take so much time and cost. So this is why it is nearly impossible for low-income countries to construct slum data. So this is a case of Accra, Ghana. You can see only like small limited areas are like geotagged with slum data, and other areas are not addressed. And second one is that even if you collect slum data with high cost, there are substantial geospatial error when aligning slum map and satellite images. So this is because of the satellite imagery errors. And the third one is quite important, is the quality differences of multi-temporal satellite images. It can significantly vary over time due to the so-called radiometric and geometric errors, such as color tone, shadows, texture, and potential errors. So these different styles of images can downscale the performance of the machine learning when training with these diverse satellite images. And the last one I mentioned already, the slum appearance differ by geographical context, which make harder to develop a universal model. So to tackle these 4 challenges in this field, we focus on the problem setting that labeled satellite images are very much insufficient, but unlabeled images are published very much across various time period. Here you can see these images has a slum data, which meaning that labeled satellite images, while these images on the right has no label. So these kind of unlabeled images are very much sufficient in many countries. So what about utilizing the information from unlabeled satellite images to improve the performance of the model? So this is why we suggest semi-supervised learning, SSL, will be appropriate for this kind of setting for slum detection to utilize large amount of unlabeled data. So method, we selected 12 cities from 3 continents, Asia, Africa, Latin America. These 3 continents are one of with the highest slum population ratio in the world. So that's why we collected these 3 continents, and we selected 4 countries and 4 capital cities, 4 major cities of this continent from each. So for example, Venezuela, Caracas, Rio de Janeiro from Brazil, and Cape Town from South Africa. And then we collected 60 centimeter per pixel resolution images. So between 2015 and 2024 from S3 ArcGIS REST API. This dataset is comprised of individual images with 256 pixel by 256 pixel, like you can see here. This is one example of individual image. So in total, we downloaded more than 2 million images for 12 countries. And then we need at least minimal labels for training, even for the semi-supervised learning. So based on the slum data, original slum data from various countries, we manually realigned the slum data to match them with satellite images. So in total, we created 86,000 images. It sounds very much, but it is not so many. So it took 1 day to label 1 city, so taking not many time, and it is only 3.1% of total satellite images, which is a very low amount. And for algorithm, we used a semi-supervised learning. You probably maybe the familiar with SSL, so which integrate the supervised loss from small amount of labeled data with unsupervised loss from unlabeled data. So it achieved additional performance gain from patterns of unlabeled images. Specifically, we have the following steps. We first make teacher network model from labeled dataset. And then we make the student model, student network model based on this teacher model. And this student network model produce pseudo-labeled dataset for unlabeled dataset. But we are not using all pseudo labels, only using them with a high performance comparing with labeled dataset and teacher network. So we use the ST++ algorithm for SSL model, and there could be various models for such approaches, but this ST++ has the highest performance among them. Additionally, we incorporated the gram metrics into our model. I don't want to talk details about it, but this metrics is to address the quality differences among satellite images. So this can normalize the influence of quality differences by comparing the feature representation of satellite images, like you can see here. So here are our results. So we use IOU as an evaluation metric for semantic segmentation result. So we compare our model with previous approaches using only like labeled images. So we achieve additional performance gains in all 12 countries. And in average, the mean IOU increased 0.07 for 12 cities and is over than 0.9, which meaning very high performance to track the slums with multi-temporal satellite images. So recent example for qualitative comparison, here is the input satellite images of Venezuela. And the second is the slum detection model from previous approaches. And the third one is ours. And the last overlap with the second and third. So our approach can define more precise boundaries, and it can identify, differentiate slum buildings from like trees and other non-slum buildings better than previous model. Another example is in images of Mumbai in 2016 and 2023. Our model can effectively recognize the changes of slum settlements with multi-temporal images. In 2016, there were huge slum settlements, but it disappeared in 2023, assumed to be demolished by redevelopment project by government. And we made a like a website to showcase our result in 12 cities. I want to share with you later after presentation, and you can see a whole result from satellite images. So for the social scientific discussion, we use our results, slum detection result in each city. And we normalized detected slum areas based on total urban areas of cities, showing with the percent. And we can find slum areas have remained either unchanged or even increased since COVID-19. So COVID-19 pandemic era is like almost between the 2020 January to 2021 September. You can see in Egypt, it increased, Honduras, also India, and Pakistan. Kenya, it decreased. But for Burkina Faso, Colombia, Brazil, and South Africa has quite consistently increasing, and even Mongolia increased. So in sum, 9 out of 12 cities show the increase of slums during the COVID-19 era. So this suggests that progress toward improving urban slums may be slower than anticipated by UN Habitat. So when comparing our result to UN Habitat data with one specific country, which is, where is it? This is Mongolia. And our results show more fluctuations. The UN Habitat estimate a very linear decrease. So this is not just a line, but there is every individual estimate by 2 years, and it decreased very consistently as expected by UN Habitat. But for our result, there was some decrease until COVID-19, before COVID-19, and after it increased for the urban poverty. There could be many explanations about this. I will skip this time. But during the COVID-19, there will be less resources given to urban poor settlements by government. So there could be some increase. And it is cross-checked by the empirical social science studies. Okay, with this wonderful result, what can we do for humanitarian project on slums. Here we showcase the applicability of our research with a slum upgrading projects in Cape Town, South Africa. We have a satellite images before and after slum upgrading project. So the blue polygons mean the slum areas detected by our model. First, we can notice that the original slum buildings were no longer classified as slum buildings in 2023. So this is because of the slum upgrading project. The building materials are quite improved by the project with more formal style. Like you can see in the roof, it changed significantly. But let's see, yeah. However, we can recognize the new slum buildings are created very near slum upgrading site, just next to the slum upgrading sites. So also the government of Cape Town attempt to maintain and manage slum buildings with better infrastructure. They were not enough to cover the massive amount of new migrants settling down in the city. So likewise, our model can be used to monitor how much slum initiatives have been effective and guide the targeted policy interventions in cities with slums. So I will conclude. So this study examined the spatial patterns of slums by detecting them from satellite images between, like, for the last decade. And our estimates show that slum areas may have increased since 2020, suggesting that urban poverty in 12 countries has persisted. So, and our project now aims to apply our model to cover the entire sub-Saharan African continent until this year, I mean. So it could be the model that can monitor, that can work as a monitoring tool for SDG 11s. And I hopefully it can help the humanitarian project in the future. Thank you so much.